All right, welcome to this week's episode of Heroes of Han. My name's Mike, and with me as always are my lovely co-host Alex. Say hello, Alex.
Hello, Alex.
And Sean. Say hello, Sean.
So what's the deal with cargo?
Yeah, I mean,
We're gonna get sued for that one.
we got a sweet ISC today, which actually was pretty good despite some of the awkwardness, but the information that came out was pretty interesting. Did you have a chance to watch it?
Oh yes. What about you, Alex?
Oh God, no. I have not had a chance to do anything today.
Oh, you,
So, like most of our videos, I will come in completely unprepared.
I mean, that tracks, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how I live my life.
Well, what we got to see was a pretty big update about. They started out by talking about Blockade Runner, the Blockade Runner event, but I think we could start out with cargo first, which is kind of the second half of the video, and then we can talk about Blockade Runner at the end. But they started out they didn't start out. They ended up talking about cargo hauling in some pretty decent detail. Like, we got a look at some of the branded shipping containers and stuff, which was cool. And we saw that the amounts of cargo that you haul seem to scale with the reputation levels that you can reach. And they actually showed sort of these larger cargo jobs that were, I guess, part of the overall cargo mission setup, which was pretty cool. That you'd get, more than what they were talking about originally, which was like the 10 SCU cargo mission. So there was like hundreds, and so they were talking about the giving the Caterpillar and the C1 kind of another job besides nothing but trade, or maybe moving RMC that you get off of a reclaimer.
Yeah, these missions seem to range from their previously stated values of like 6 to 10 SU to hundreds. So at the very least, I think people who invested into or orgs who invested into large cargo ships can just do that without hopefully there's enough incentive for them to do that, so they stop ruining the economy by selling RMC and preventing people who do salvage from actually profiting.
Right. Plus, it's just cool to have something else to do with these large cargo ships besides moving things, like basic trade.
That's always good.
And they also mentioned, I guess they didn't mention, they really talked about like the kind of the differences in the missions, where you'll have like single pickup, single drop off, multi pickup, single drop off, and single pickup, multi drop off, which I thought was really good. It's similar to the current box missions,
Just a little bit more advanced.
right? Yeah, and it would leverage like, I guess, planet side landing zones, as well as like LEOs, low Earth orbit stations like Bajini and Everest.
Presumably, I would assume it might also involve Lagrange points, like McL1, for example. I don't see why those wouldn't also be included.
Yeah, I think they did mention that as well. I'd have just grazed over it, but yeah, I think they had also mentioned some of those would work as well.
Yeah, because really, right now, the only time you go to these Lagrange points are, one, as a basically en route to your reclaiming mission, or two, you're just going to drop off stuff to get refined.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's been probably a couple years since I've been to most of them. I guess the only thing that really made me ever go to them at the time was getting certain ship parts and ship weapons that were only available at certain ones.
Yeah, either that or maybe a mission that specifically sends you to one of those Lagrange points. Those are literally the only two reasons I've went there, because all of the smaller ships that I use, like the Pisces, for example, they do have enough quantum fuel in their stock configuration to get around without needing to stop every 20 million kilometers.
Yeah, I guess that's another scenario, is when you're a smaller ship, you need to stop and refuel, and you just go to the closest one.
Oh yeah,
I know.
was one of
I know Carson, for example. He refused to change out the quantum drive on his Hawk for a while, and with the Beacon, I believe was the stock one at the time. I don't know if it still is, but it's decently fast, but it chews through quantum fuel like crazy, and he had to stop and refuel quite a bit.
Well, I remember when we put that upgraded QT drive on the Reclaimer, we had every time we flew to a Lagrange point, we had to fill up.
That
It was either we take 3 business days to get there and we sip the fuel, or we get there pretty quickly, but it takes almost 3/4 of the tank.
That's why I think you have to be kind of proactive when you balance the pros and cons of each quantum drive. Like in the Reclaimer, I think it would probably benefit from the slowest military drive, since that one's also the most fuel efficient. I think it's the Pontes.
Like I said, like I keep saying, when we get the Pyro, we're going to have to rethink quantum drives.
Yeah, for a lot of ships, definitely. For some ships, it won't really matter much, like the Starlifter or the Mercury Star Runner, for example. But for other ships, you're going to have to completely rethink what you do. And I think any smaller ship in general is just going to have a harder time. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. I'm more interested if we're actually also going to be able to ship fuel as cargo, like without dedicated fuel canisters like we have on the Starfarer, for example.
Yeah, I would think so. There was a video that they posted, might have been another ISC, where they were showing off like liquid cargo containers.
Yeah.
And so,
Wait. My question is, are they going to be Florida liquid cargo containers where we just fill up grocery bags?
No, they'll be black, like glad bags. Sorry.
That makes me sad.
It's they almost look like they took the types of containers in question are like if you took an oil tanker and put it inside a steel box frame.
Yeah, they kind of look like water catchment tanks.
Yeah,
they were
that's
like
probably a better
plastic
analogy.
drums with like a pallet, like a flat bottom.
Like just basically giant 500-gallon drums of water.
And they were talking about like how there would be a separate like a side conveyor on some larger ships where you would load ammo and fuel. Is that right?
Yes, I remember hearing that as well. Although it does beg the question if they would then have to rework more ships again to include those things.
I think that might be why they kind of sectioned off like larger ships for it, so that they wouldn't have to redo as many, since most of them are still in production.
Yeah, I don't blame them, honestly. Like, throwing out... I know a lot of people are irritated that they haven't done any more work on the Banu Merchantman, but honestly, I can't blame them with how many like features they're trying to get into the game, and then they have to keep changing the design of each ship to... even if it's like slightly, it's still a lot of work to implement something like they did with the Reclaimer when they added the RMC printers in the back. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Well, thankfully, there's now starting to focus on ships that their assets can be used in other things, like what's the new Drake ship? The Fatapillar, the Iron what?
Ironclad.
Ironclad.
The Ironclad. So it's going to take parts from the Caterpillar, and then when that's done, the parts from the Ironclad are going to go to the Privateer. I mean the Kraken.
Yeah.
Polaris.
I mean,
parts of that are going to go towards the Perseus and towards the Galaxy.
I mean, that's the whole reason that they were able to have such a quick, relatively quick turnaround time for the Crusader Spirit series as well, was because you share a lot of parts with the, the Mercury Star Runner and the Starlifter.
Yeah. I know some people are going to complain that that's lazy, but I'm like, look at the car manufacturers. How many times do car manufacturers reuse parts? I think that's the most realistic thing about these ships, where all Drake ships have a certain aesthetic to it. It's garbage, but it's an aesthetic.
Yeah, and it's realistic from an engineering perspective, too. I mean, it is, as you say, where oftentimes manufacturers will just reuse parts where it's most applicable. You can take a Lexus and Camry or Toyota Avalon of the same year, and, everything that's under the hood is, apart from, maybe a couple of performance upgrades, depending on the model, it's virtually identical. They just have a different chassis. That's it.
Yeah, I guess one aspect of that is missing from Star Citizen as far as manufacturer reuse of parts goes is that there's no cross manufacturer reuse, because if you look under the hood of that Lexus, there's probably a ton of Ford parts in there too.
I mean, it would depend on the model, but yeah. There are some. But yeah, so back to the fuel. You know how you were talking about the dispensers and like loading units that you would have to use? I'm curious if even if you don't have that, will we still be able to transfer fuel, like maybe using hoses? Because I know that they had fuel hoses in Squadron 42 in the latest gameplay trailer that they had. I mean, there were NPC crew members who were hooking up hoses to the back of the Gladius, and I don't know if that was actual just set dressing or if it was an actual feature that was intended on being put into Star Citizen, because they never really clarified on that. But then, you know, they've also said in the past that, like, hey, you know, you can buy extra resources for your ships and store them in the cargo hold and then use them whenever you want, you know, such as fuel or ammo. And obviously I don't think you could refuel another like ship. Like, for instance, if you were flying a Polaris and you wanted to refuel another Polaris, let's say, I don't think you could do that. But
No, but
and it makes
refueling
sense
one
why
is a fighter in the hangar.
yeah, but if you like, you know, like you said, if you have a fighter in the hangar, I could totally see the feasibility of you know, bringing up a couple of fuel canisters from the cargo deck using the elevator and connecting a hose to it, and then, you know, connecting the hose to the fighter to fuel it up. I just don't know if that's
I'm
part of their
already
plans.
seeing the cargo bay fire when someone drops a jerry can.
Yeah, I thought that was the ultimate sort of method for refueling. That we wouldn't be able to just land and refuel magically. Like, there would be a requirement of a hose being connected, whether it's by you or an NPC, maybe for a fee, that you'd actually have to connect to the station and get fuel put into your fuel tank.
I just saw the comment pop up. Yeah, I do agree that to some extent it does kind of defeat the point of a refueling ship. But I also think that okay, it just popped up on the big screen now. But I think there's also an argument to be made where it doesn't really work if you can't, like, it doesn't, I don't know how to phrase this in a way that makes sense.
No,
It doesn't matter as much if you aren't able to refuel, like, ship to ship rather than a carrier to a ship, if that makes sense. So, you know, for instance, I don't think if you were going on a long haul expedition in Constellation Andromeda, for example, you would have to presumably take, depending on what you were doing, if you were going to do like a little mining expedition or something, you'd probably take a rover, and then if it was going to be a super long expedition, you'd probably have to take food supplies, water supplies, and I don't know, maybe some like armor and weapons or whatever, just in case. But then how much room would that leave you in the cargo hold for whatever you haul back? And then if you did have room for fuel, how much fuel are you going to take? You know, is it even going to be enough to fill up the quantum or hydrogen tanks like halfway? You know, so I think the way that they could balance that is maybe the individual SCU containers cannot hold nearly as much as a dedicated fuel tank like the Starfarer has. That could be a way to balance it, because then you'd have to like bring 100 SCU of fuel to even like fill up a star, like a Hercules Starlifter, like a quarter tank, because granted that thing does have huge fuel tanks. So
But
I don't know.
also think of it this way: if you're going to carry fuel on like a Connie, you're probably going to carry it for the snub fighter or maybe the ground vehicle, you know, or like a smaller ship you have with you. But yeah, no, fueling ships are never not going to have a purpose, even if there's large carriers, because you got to
Well,
think about it like in real world aspect with the military. You still have these these fuel planes that fly by and reload fighters, or you know, fighters will land on an aircraft carrier. If you're out on a mission, you know, if we're in the game out on a mission and we got a refueler ahead of us, yeah, cool. Pop in, fuel up, take off, and go. Whereas landing on a carrier is going to be more involved. It's going to take longer. Maybe we'll repair the ship, reload, and refuel.
Well, there's also the whole gamut of ships that don't have any cargo space. Like, you're still going to have fuel around for them, or a method of refueling them in space.
Yeah, just think if we take a squadron of Lightnings out, once we tap out, we don't have any place to put extra fuel.
Well, you're forgetting all the working ships too. Like the Mole doesn't have anywhere to put fuel containers, and
or the Prospector,
any of those ships. And when they're out there on the long haul, maybe not realizing how much fuel they've gone through, it's much more useful to have a refueling ship that goes up to them instead of finding some way to shove giant barrels of fuel in their mess hall or something.
Yeah, I mean, also, although I do agree with, I will play devil's advocate. At least currently, refueling doesn't matter very much, and I don't know how much it'll actually matter in Pyro, considering, like, without knowing how the reputation system is going to work. And I don't want to go too far into Pyro because we've already talked about it quite extensively. But without knowing how the reputation system is going to affect your access to services, like, we know in theory how it's supposed to work, but we don't know in practice how it currently is working, or how they will have it working by 4.0. In the interim, since we don't know that, the best we can assume is that all of the stations that were in the existing tech preview for Pyro are still going to be there, and you're still going to be able to dock and refuel. So, it's like, is it even going to be an issue? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if it's going to be any worse than it is now. The only times we've ever refueled were just to learn how to do it, and I've probably since forgotten completely how to do it. I just don't really see a usefulness in general for refueling as of right now.
I think there's been maybe like 1 or 2 times where I actually was in need of a refuel, and I think out of one of those 2 times, somebody offered to come refuel me, and then they just took like 3 hours and didn't show up, and I was bored and it was late already, so I just logged off.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty much like every experience I've had relying on somebody to come and help me that wasn't one of you guys.
It's like, I get that they want this game to be, like, we want the players to interact with each other and rely on each other, but the harsh reality is that relying on other people for services, it just takes so long, especially compared to the NPCs, because the NPCs can just jump in and assist you, like, within 5 minutes. Like, they could, I mean, realistically, they could do it instantaneously, right? They could just spawn an NPC like 300 kilometers away from you, have them quantum travel to you so you don't see them appear in front of you, and then help you. But if they wanted to say, for realism's sake, like, this guy has to actually travel to you, it could just be a 5-minute flight, where if you compare that to a player, they've logged on, they're waiting for contracts, then they have to go get in their ship, get all their armor or whatever it is they want to bring, get all their little food, and then they have to fly out there, and by the time they fly out there, it's already been like 45 minutes, and either the person is dead already from, I don't know, running out of oxygen because the ship's borked, or whatever the case may be, or they've logged out because they're bored as fuck.
And I've got another thing here in defense of the refueling ship. Think about it this way. Let's say we have a Polaris, we're flying around, and we've got a pretty decent crime stat. We're obviously going to try and stay out of some major areas if we're low on supplies. We'll have maybe someone, if any one of our friends have a refueling ship, we'll have them meet us, refuel the ship, have someone else buy cargo for us and resupply it.
But the reason that's so much less of a headache is because it's a pre-coordinated and predetermined effort to accomplish something, as opposed to a reactionary type effort where you put out a call for help, and then people have to take time to get there. And we've already discussed
Pyro's
before,
out and refueling is profitable, there will be people just flying around in a Starfarer.
Maybe. I don't know, dude. We'll have to see.
You know how when you set out a contract, you can set sort of like a rating preference, like a minimum rating for who can take it? Maybe it already has it, and I'm just not aware, but would there be the ability, maybe potentially, to have you set like a preferred, what's it called? When you're
A preferred time limit?
no, like with somebody that you're aligned with, a rep, like an organization that you have high rep with, for example. Like if you are a mostly lawless person and you want fuel from somebody who won't just blow you up for the contract, who is also kind of lawless as well. Maybe there's a way.
Basically, you're looking at someone's Yelp review.
Yeah, in a way. It's more like their Chinese social credit, I guess.
Well, I mean, like, even if I'm a lawless person and I get a guy who's coming in who's agreed to come out with me, fuel me up, and then take off, he doesn't mess with me and I don't mess with him, yeah, he's getting 5 stars.
Yeah, but even when I'm not lawless, I still have my finger on the trigger most of the time. And just
Yeah,
waiting.
but eventually you're going to start reading, like, if people leave comments on it, like, if that comes as an option, you'd be like, oh, man, this guy's really good. I can trust him.
Oh, yeah, there's no way they're putting comments in this thing. That'd
be great, though.
I think Mike. I think a way that they could do it if they really wanted to put in comments, because I think comments would be helpful. They could just have predetermined responses that you can select from, like service was great,
trustworthy,
or
not trustworthy.
or trustworthy, or this guy sucks. But like you can't type your own. It would just have to be a predetermined
Yeah,
selection.
because if it was
Yeah,
type
that's a
your
good
own,
idea.
we would never be able to put out a medical contract.
Right.
Yeah. People would just put, all sorts of profanities in the review section.
Oh God, and it'd be racist.
I'm Alex. That just reminds me of the reviews on the Superstore and Helldivers.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, some of those are really funny.
You had mentioned, I guess, profitability for refueling, but that kind of brings to mind something else that they showed during the video, which was the EVR algorithm, the earnings versus reward, or right? Was it? Yeah, it was earnings versus effort.
That's
Sorry,
correct.
effort versus reward. That's what it was. So it's an algorithm that they've been putting together more automatically, kind of determine what kind of payout you'd get from completing a job. I wonder if that could make its way into contracts as well, like personal contracts.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Obviously, if I have to fly across the entire map into a pretty well-known area that's pirate controlled or just dangerous due to weather effects, I should make a little bit more money on that.
Yeah, and as it is right now, like you just kind of offer an amount of money to get somebody out there, and like if you're really serious about getting it done, like you have a cargo ship full of cargo and you need fuel and you're willing to put like $1 million out, like nobody thinks that contract's legitimate. They think automatically that it's some kind of scam. So maybe if it was
or a trap, it often is,
and just taken if that like if power was just taken away from the player and being like, okay, you are 49 gigameters away from the nearest fuel port, and the nearest refuel contract acceptor is somewhere else, and it's going to be this much effort and this much time and blah blah blah. Like maybe there's a way
the computer can probably run the calculations of how much it will at least cost them, the bare minimum to cover their fuel, and then a little bit extra.
Yeah, because that's something that's definitely not taken into account, is the amount of fuel and effort it takes in general to get somewhere. Because if we're stranded on Han, like we've needed rides before, and we've put out 20,000, 30,000 for a contract, and even then nobody shows up, or when they do, they're on microtech or something, and it takes them half an hour to get there.
Yeah, because literally, in my opinion, it's only gotten worse with the price hikes that they've done on all the ships and vehicles. But even in past patches, I really don't see something that's below even. I would say 40,000 credits is decent, but ideally anything below, you don't do anything that's below like 80,000 creds unless it's for fun, like if you're actually trying to make money. And obviously not everybody can do those types of missions at the same time, but with the prices of things, actually it was back with the old prices of ships and vehicles, it's a lot easier to justify like doing several missions that are only worth 30 or 40,000 credits. But especially now with the new pricing model, it's like doing anything that doesn't pay you at least like somewhere close to 100,000 credits isn't even worth your time.
Yeah, once you hit a certain level, but as a beginner,
The way I look at it is, as long as it covers fuel and I make some money afterwards, it's worth it for me.
For you maybe, but for me and for
Well,
me, especially me
even
looking.
anytime there's a reset, as long as I'm not coming into the negatives running this mission.
I think that's the only time it
Yeah.
matters for me. But at some point, you just have so much money. I don't really care anymore if I make money doing something. If I want to do it, I just do it.
Yeah,
Because it's
but
not just
I'm,
money.
I'm
Most of the
talking
stuff
about
you're still getting a reputation.
I'm talking about if you're trying, like, for the average player who's trying to meet some monetary goal. Especially now, it's just hard to do that. And I don't want this game to ever reach the cesspool level of grind that, like, Grand Theft Auto Online is, for example. I think that would really
that market is completely
I think that would
warped.
really destroy, like, everything that they've tried to build, and, like, good relations they've tried to foster with the community in general.
Yeah, I think that they aren't. I think that they're aware of that kind of stuff, and that's probably why they're making these kinds of changes, like lowering the amount you get and increasing the cost of things. On the surface, it's like, oh, we just want to slow down gameplay, but everything here is just a test, and eventually, it'll work itself out, and hopefully, in the end, it won't end up being ridiculous, like a ridiculous grind.
Because at the end of the day, the whole point of a game is to have fun, and obviously, especially with a multiplayer experience like this, when you're giving, you want to have a sense of progression. And we've talked about this aspect before, but I think the reputation system is the progression. It's not necessarily the acclamation of wealth or the acquisition of ships that are indicative of progression in this game. I think it's really the reputation and what stuff you can do with how much rep you have. But also, I feel like that at the same time is a detriment in some ways, because then people don't get to experience a lot of the cool stuff that the game has to offer because they're just not high enough reputation, So, but I think that's a separate issue that, it's just something noteworthy that I was thinking about. So.
Okay. Side note, a little off topic here. Mike, remind me never to wear this helmet again, because I'm looking at myself and I feel like I'm just a pug. One eye going kind of in each opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see that. What I see when I look at mine is, I don't know if you've ever seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but the Vogons, like you see the droopy mouth. That's what I always see if I look at the wrong angle on this one.
I always thought you're like kind of like a mosquito-looking helmet.
Yeah, I can see mosquito, but really Vogon is kind of what I get from it.
Or something from like a Call of Duty futuristic warfighter, like one of the fighter pilot helmets.
I just wish these little lines would light up like Sam Fisher. That'd be cool.
Well, it's like I've got the bracket on my helmet for like, I guess like a light, but there's no attachments, and I've got my Wi-Fi antenna on the side of my helmet.
I thought that was for like XM radio.
The ham radio.
All right.
So, did you have an update for us on that potential Saber variant?
Oh, yeah, I saw some more stuff about it, and so the name, as of right now, the word on the street is that it's going to be the Saber Peregrine, and that's based on, I think, something John Crew had said a few weeks ago or something like that. The speculation still is that it's either an interdiction ship or a racer.
Or a racer.
Yeah.
Personally,
I think it's kind of.
But they were like,
I think it's
go
too
ahead.
big to be a racer.
well, they were saying that because of the speed, like they showed another demo, like not a demo video, but like a short kind of teaser clip of it flying really quickly through Lorville. And I think that there is a very pronounced high speed, that you can see in the video for the ship to take. And they are suggesting that the speed is something that would be beneficial for it to be an interdiction ship. But I have a real hard time, like, really believing that, because if you look at the other ones, maybe aside from the Mantis, they're all pretty slow. And so I don't really...
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea is, like, if you're interdicting someone, they're going to try and get away from you as fast as they can so they can jump again. And if you can keep up with them...
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes it a little bit unfair for the person trying to get away if this thing is
Yeah, but then it's
going Mach
like
Jesus
I'm sure
behind
it's
you.
probably made of tinfoil.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the trade-off, right? If it was just a super simple ship to blow up, that's kind of where the Mantis sits, is it's like it's pretty quick, and it'll keep up with most things, but it's also basically made out of cardboard and paper. So I'm still...
I'm sure you don't.
It also
I'm
doesn't
sure you
have
don't get
very-
like the Phoenix, the Firebird's missile rack, or any other type of weapons. You just get 2 blasters.
Yeah, it's got 2 little pea shooters, and I don't know. I'm still in the camp that it's a racer. That's my guess.
I don't know. I think it's too
I
big to
think-
be a racer.
I think if it is an interdiction ship, hopefully they don't put any missiles on it, like whatsoever, and it's just the 2 guns.
Or if they insist on putting missiles, it's like size 1s.
I mean, if
I
it
think
is...
the Mantis has 2 size 2s by default.
So we have like the Antares, right, which is a similarly sized ship that has a quantum interdiction device and a quantum dampener, right? Like it's both.
Yes, it has. Well, it has the inter.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't have the dampener.
No, it does. The interdiction device and the dampener are one and the same. They do both things.
I thought you could do one and or the other.
No, they act in the same. So, I mean, you could just be quantum traveling past a Mantis that's active, and it'll pull you right out.
And that's the quantum snare.
Yes, so it has, those 3 capabilities, which is, you can pull ships that are in quantum out of it, stop ships
Prevent them from going to quantum.
Yeah, from going into quantum, and then actively block them from even like activating the quantum drive, which, now that I think about it, I haven't tested that in nav mode. Do interdiction ships QEDs actively block you from using nav mode speed, since they kind of like changed their description around what nav mode does? Because I don't know if you remember that, but they were like, or they said something along the lines of, oh yeah, your ship can't go its full speed because it doesn't have the quantum bubble, so when you go into nav mode, it turns on your quantum drive, and then you're sailing inside the quantum bubble, and then your ship can go faster, which, I'm not even going to get into all the reasons why that doesn't make any sense, but, it does beg the question, because I legitimately don't know, I haven't tested it, if interdiction ships stop you from doing that, from utilizing your full speed.
Well, we'll have to test that one night.
Yeah, that's something that's really lacking for me, is fully understanding how to utilize the quantum interdiction stuff.
I think we only did that once. We hunted someone down with interdiction ships.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
It was just some guy that was just being a jerk, and we pulled out 2 Mantises, and then we pulled out, I think it was 3 fighters.
Yeah, but it makes sense that it would prevent you from reaching, you're using your nav mode, because nav mode essentially relies on your quantum spinning up. And so I don't know where the line is between when you're spun up and not spun up and how that affects your speed. But from what I can tell, if it doesn't get all the way spun up, then you can't travel any faster than your SCM speed. Or maybe if you run boost. But
Another comment said that their understanding is that it forces you into SCM mode.
well, that's interesting. Even if you're snared
don't know.
while in quantum, you emerge in SCM mode.
Presumably, but again, I don't know for sure. I would have to test it before I make any definitive claims myself.
Right. And so the way I look at it is maybe there is another refactor happening with the size of device for quantum interdiction. Is the Mantis has this massive rotating gyroscope thing on the butt of it, and the Cutlass has a pretty large area as well. And then there's an Avenger, right? That's also an interdictor.
Yeah, the Warlock.
The Warlock.
No,
Yeah.
it's an EMP, but
So
it is
it's only
interdiction.
EMP.
Yeah.
The Vanguard has one.
That's right. Yeah, the Vanguard. Or is that one EMP?
Sentinel.
I thought it
The
was only an
Sentinel
EMP.
has. No, it's an EMP.
The
Yeah,
Sentinel is an EMP.
So our only
The-
interdictors are the Cutlass and the Mantis right now, and the Antares.
The Cutlass, the Cutlass, the Scorpius, and the Mantis, to my knowledge.
We'll have to test those theories one night.
Yeah, I mean, I can see there's a little bit of a gap for maybe another interdiction ship with quantum snare and an EMP.
That shall be the Zeus
I don't
MR.
think it would have an EMP because the original Saber Raven is the one with the EMP.
That's true. I wonder if maybe they're meant to work in concert with each other.
That would make the most sense to me because I don't think anything smaller or that small would have both the EMP and the QED drive on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of interdiction, my question is going to be, will size of the ship matter? Like, will a Mantis be able to stop, like, a Javelin or an Idris flying by?
Well, I haven't heard anything about overall sizing for interdiction ships. So I would think, at least right now, it will be able to snare anything.
I do hope it does scale down, so, that you'd have to run maybe I'd hate it that I have this large ship, even though we're two quill, and like a tiny ass Mantis stops us. Like, at least get 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point. I do believe that it is a little bit unrealistic for a ship the size of the Mantis to stop at a ship the size of the Polaris or the Javelin.
But on the flip side, I would piss my pants laughing if there's a small group of pirates sitting there. The Mantis, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get this C2 or this Hull C that's gonna be coming down this route," and all of a sudden a Javelin just pops out of Quantum, and all the cannons are just faced at the group.
Well, when you do it, I think it tells you what kind of ship it is, doesn't it?
It's been so many years,
It's been
I can't
so
even
long.
remember.
Yeah, it gives you some kind of indication. I just don't remember what it says or shows. I just remember it being
I think
red.
I think it just indicates that you've caught a ship, so to speak.
Well, when I'm back, we'll test everything.
All right. Yeah, we'll need to make time to go through all that stuff. Or maybe it's pointless and it's all going to change in the next patch anyway.
Yeah, that's also possible.
But like I said, I would die laughing. Like, even though I would be really mad if we had an Idris and it gets pulled from QT by a Mantis and like a couple of Hornets, and all of a sudden this massive ship comes out and you just hear, "Oh crap."
Yeah, and that sounds kind of fun, actually. I would like if that happened more often. I'm probably cursing us right now, but I would like if things would pull us out of Quantum and engage us more often. Got another comment.
I love the idea of 5 Mantises linking to take down. Only if somebody has to get out and hook all of them into a relay.
No, if it's like Guardians, when all the ships kind of link up together and make that big mesh and try to stop.
Yeah, no. But I want it to, like, we just make Sean get out and just hook all of them up with like jumper cables to create one giant interdiction bubble.
That sounds less
That would
realistic than just touching the tips of wings and locking together.
I think you could still achieve the same thing by literally just having the ships like dock to each other or something. Like if they had a little docking arm,
Docking collars.
No,
Not only are we
not a
interdicting,
full
we're
collar.
making another Mantis.
Docking collar, but like an actual port, almost like an antenna uplink. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just like linking the little red lightning bolts that come off it when it's powered up. They all just kind of connect to each other.
Just make one big bubble.
Yeah.
Like that, if I got pulled out of Quantum in a Polaris and there were like 3 Mantises linked together, I'd be like, all right, they actually coordinated this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the one time that I got interdicted, it was back when I was doing quant mining with you, Mike, and I had I think it was a prospector at the time, but I was on my way to Arc L1, and I had some
no,
dude
we were
named
in the
Mantis.
mole.
Oh, no, we were in the mole. No,
We
you're
were
right.
in the mole.
Okay, I'm just remembering wrong.
Yeah, and he had pulled us out and was blackmailing us to give him money to let us go. And we didn't even have quant. We had like iron and stuff because we couldn't find any quant. And we were just like, we'll just blow up. So we self-destructed instead of paying him.
Didn't we also try and ram him while self-destructing?
Yeah, a little bit. We shot at him with the mantis, or with the, not the mantis, the mole's
the
tiny
mining
weapons,
lasers.
and it was doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I think he shot us with some distortions and shut us down, and wanted like $10,000 or something. And it was like right after a wipe too, so we were poor, and we're just like, hey, we're not giving you anything. We'd rather blow up and just blow up the ship.
I hate those guys that block and be like, "Oh yeah, you gotta pay me off." 'Cause remember we were doing Ninetales?
Oh,
and
yeah. During Ninetales, that's a whole different breed of cancer.
I think I lost 8 million that one night,
From what?
Because I loaded up a C2, and it was the original blockade mission. We were
Oh,
all going to
okay.
the point, and
Yeah.
then there was just one guy flying around the base, stopping anyone from coming in. And I had all my power to my shields. I was just about to land, and he blew my ship up.
Yeah, that
I
was
think he
at,
rammed you, if I remember correctly.
no, it
He
was at
rammed you while you were in
Indestructible.
the hangar.
It was at A2 that was indestructible. Like, we all shot at it over and over again in different ships, and he never blew up.
And then I remember someone finally pulled out the Terrapin to do that part of the mission, but I was so mad. I lost 8 million that night.
Yeah, and actually, so they were talking about Blockade Runners for the last few weeks or so, and that's what I thought it was going to be. Is the same thing as Ninetales, basically, but without the huge firefight at the end. So I was really kind of blasé about it. But they went into more detail with the ISC video, and it actually seems pretty cool. Instead of having to go and buy cargo, I remember how we had to we try to pre-buy cargo, because during the actual event you couldn't get any because it would just sell out. So
Yeah, and you had to foot the bill if if you had losses too. So it was like, nah.
So now it looks like
it was-
there's pirate ships have stolen the cargo, and so you have to go and get it back from them, either by
So kind
destroying
of
them.
like Xenothreat.
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of like Xena. It's more like Ninetales in how it's played, except the dynamics have changed a little bit. So like the cargo is not just sitting there in blown up ships. Like, you have to get to the ship that's carrying it, and you can blow it up and then take the smaller amount of cargo, but you know, maybe it's a little bit easier, or you can disable it and board it and unload the ship, and put it on yours and take it to where it needs to go.
What
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean-
can actually take their ship?
I guess, yeah, maybe you can actually
Probably.
just take their ship.
Soft death never hurt anyone either.
Well,
No, just run Distortion, shut it down, see if you can get it running again.
the problem with soft death is it's not guaranteed.
Yeah. But if you can get on the ship, take everyone out, and just take the ship,
Well, it makes, yeah, I mean, that's the loop that interests me the most, is being able to disable a ship, board it, clear out the pirates, and take the cargo, because that feels more like the kind of mission that I would want to do versus pre-buying a C2 full of cargo and hoping that I can make it to a station at what would now be SEM speeds, basically, because you couldn't quantum to the station. You'd have to fly in manually, which took an eternity and just opened you up
well,
to
you
attack.
could quantum, but once you got to a certain spot, everyone was automatically pulled out.
Yeah, you were dampened for like 25 kilometers, and it would take forever to get from the edge of that to the station.
Yeah, and the entire time you had other players shooting at you just because they wanted to make your day miserable. Keep in mind, this was back when cargo was not something that you could steal. So people would just blow it
Oh
up.
yeah, it wasn't physicalized.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
make your day sad. Basically, it was just trolling to blow that up, because it doesn't. Well, they were able to. If you were a criminal, you got to join the Ninetales, right? And your job was to stop them.
But it's like, why would you if you don't even make any money?
Yeah, I don't recall there being any kind of reward for that.
No, there wasn't. To my
Other than
knowledge, there was no
reputation.
reward. I mean, I never went on the lawless side, but to my knowledge, there was never a reward for doing that. So people literally just did it to fuck with you and make your day miserable.
Yeah, and that event ended up getting really boring because it was like a solid hour of just shooting Idris after Idris after Idris. It was just tedious. So that aspect, if they try to bring that to Blockade Runner, I don't think they mentioned any of that today, but if they try to bring that, I'm just going to do probably the cargo side of it and then abandon it, because I really don't like those big firefights.
I mean, it doesn't help that they lag a ton either.
Well, it's super confusing too, because everybody accidentally tags a friendly player, and so everybody's red, and especially with this new UI, the way it looks and how hard it is to distinguish between more than maybe 3 targets, it's just going to be a sea of red everywhere and impossible to play, just the way Xenothreat was this time.
Dude, don't even get me started on the UI again. That's so annoying.
Well, maybe we can get something like a laser painting system.
Well, I think it's just a problem of being able to see what ships are out there, because it's either a
Yeah,
sea of
'cause
white
they-
or a sea of red, and they all are just 200-point font in your screen no matter where you look.
Yeah,
Well,
they inflated the size of everything, and it makes it illegible.
No, but think if we had like some sort of laser painting system that we could use on the ground, I'm sure we could use the space.
Yeah,
Like whatever ship we're in, just throw me out with the gun, and I can just paint the Idris, and you're like, oh, cool.
Why
missiles are
would
gonna
we
hit
need
it.
that if we had a targeting system previously that worked just
It's
fine?
more pinpoint now.
Or you just have a
Oh, my
working
goodness.
UI for
Yeah.
Well,
for
you're
combat.
asking way too much here.
Well,
We're not. They
mean-
could just change the UI elements back.
Yeah,
The
just-
ones that they didn't update. Like, just change the pip markers back to what they were.
yeah, just go into SVN.
Write a little if
and, like,
statement and say,
go back a few commits and change it back.
if you do this, don't. Problem solved.
Yeah,
That's how if statements work, right?
It is borderline unusable, and I'm probably gonna have sorry devs if you go to the comments for this, but they really shouldn't have developers or artists working on UI elements, because this is what happens.
It looks pretty. Does it,
It
work?
either
It looks pretty.
It either looks pretty or looks ugly, depending on who worked on it. But in either instance, it's bad. Like, get
It
some
doesn't
UI
work.
people, some user experience people in there to do this kind of stuff, and not let your artists design things in a bubble.
I think they should just hire you, honestly, to do this.
CIG email me with an offer. So, like I was saying, the boarding stuff is what really interests me, and part of that aspect is the use of distortion weapons, which I haven't used distortions since like 3.15 maybe, when they were still fun, like with the distortion scatter guns, getting in and like shutting down the hammerhead to blow it up with a saber or something like that. That was a lot of fun, but I haven't touched distortions in a long time. So I really don't even know how they work or how well they work.
I've used distortion on our own friends more often than not.
You talking about Ryan?
Yeah. Flyby, had a distortion on the front of my Centurion. Completely powered him down. Nothing he
Yeah.
could do about it. Couldn't get and then he belly landed because there's nothing he could do.
Yeah.
Well, we were caught.
Classic.
Sean and I were in the Scorpius on one of our
Oh, yeah.
troublemaking missions where we go and just
It
kind
was
of.
Jumptown.
Was it Jumptown? Oh, it was Jumptown.
Yeah, it was Jumptown 2.1. You
Yeah.
know, they're revamped when they first revamped it, or
So-
the second time. They
Yeah,
revamped it.
we were doing Jumptown. Well, kind of doing Jumptown. We were just going to check it out and shoot down a few ships, but we got caught against another ship. I think it was another Scorpius, right? That had a distortion.
Yeah, his turret gunner had full distortions, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, full distortions on that thing, and he kept shutting down our ship like it was nothing.
Yeah, we couldn't do anything. Like I was pulling up on the stick, trying to do everything I could to keep control of the ship. But the best I could do was coast us onto the ground, and we landed pretty softly. But that's only because the ship is aerodynamic, I guess. So
I like the idea of distortions just ruining someone's day without blowing them up.
Well, against players, I guess it's pretty limited. I think I've mostly just been the victim of distortion usage. But against NPCs, I think this might be kind of fun to load up a ship with distortion weapons and disable. I'm still talking about Blockade Runner, by the way. Disable these NPC ships that are carrying the cargo and board it and stuff. Like that sounds like Xenothreat is a good time. Like working together and unloading those starfarers and putting the cargo on the ship. So this sounds like even more fun to me.
here's the hot take of the day. I fucking hate distortion weapons. I have yet to test them since the rework, but I've only ever been on the receiving end of them, and I just hate that there is literally zero defense against them, especially for people who go and research these silly meta loadouts instead of just using practical things. They're like, oh haha, I'm gonna put 6 distortion guns on my Reliant Tana or something, and it's like a complete meme build, and then they just
You
appear.
can't kill me if you can't work.
Yeah, and they just send you careening into the ground and, you know, your ship is malfunctioning. I just, look, for fighters, okay, whatever. Maybe you can shut them down. Especially, and that's what I don't know, is I don't know what their effectiveness against larger ships is now. But if they are effective against large ships, especially in like light, medium, even heavy fighters, you shouldn't be able to disable a hammerhead, for example, because that's just going back to what we had with old distortions back in 3.14, where you could just put, you know, two size 4s on a Hercules and just sit right next to the hammerhead and shoot them a couple of times and just completely disable them. Like, that's, you know, size 4s even aren't even that big anymore, considering all of the guns just got an upsize with the gimbal changes.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there are a lot of light fighters with size 4 hardpoints.
Well, it's my understanding that distortions don't work through shields right now. So I think your first task is to lower the shields on a ship. So you wouldn't have, I guess, a situation where you could just roll in with a ship with nothing but distortions and disable it. Like, they just wouldn't go through the shield.
I hope that's the case, because I would think that your shields would protect you from distortion weapons in the same way that they protect you from laser weapons. You know, it makes sense that ballistics go through shields, because clearly these shields are energy based and not kinetic barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Like something like in Mass Effect, all the shield barriers that you see, for the most part, apart from some of the very experimental ones, are all kinetic barriers. But you know, in this case, in Star Citizen, clearly they're all energy-based barriers. So it makes sense that ballistic can go through, and I'm okay with that, because it, you know, they have their strengths and weaknesses, but at least from the perspective of being on the receiving end of like 3 or 4 reworks worth of distortion weapon changes. Again, I'd have to test the most recent iteration, especially since I think, I could be wrong, but I think one of the unwritten patch note changes that they did for the PTU was they had a different setup again for the distortion weapons. So I'd have to check that out.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise
myself.
me if that was the case, with Blockade Runner being an event and them basically directly saying, like, use distortions to disable them to board them. It makes me think that they probably put some work into it so that it operates more like it should. If you think about how logically distortion should work, it would make sense to me that they made that change to where you do have to lower the shields first before you can actually shut a ship down with them.
Or if they do work on shields, they're at maybe a fraction of the power of regular laser repeaters.
Yeah, I think that was the original sort of take on them, was that they would overload electrical components, and since the shields worked with electricity, basically they were overloading the shields and eventually causing them to overheat and shut down.
Yeah, and that was my understanding too, because, you know, as I said, they're energy-based shields, so it makes sense that if you overload the shield emitter, it would shut off, presumably to overheating or something, as you said.
That's the hope, anyway. Because I mean, it would still feel a little cheese to waltz in, find the ship full of cargo, and just, you know, whack it a couple times with some size 4s or size 5, and just have it be disabled really quickly. Like, that would really cut into the fun, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're not even giving them an opportunity to fight back, so it's like, it's not, you know, my grandmother used to have an old saying, which I still think is very applicable, as much as, you know, some of the crybabies in the community might think, like, you know, but you're ruining my fun. But, you know, fun is only fun when it's fun for everyone. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum or anything. Purely my opinion is that it would be way less fun if you could just roll up and disable a ship with a couple shots.
I mean, one of the most fun encounters I ever had in Star Citizen in general Like, and there's a lot of them, right? But one of the ones that was really memorable to me was because it was like really interesting and engaging, and the people that we were fighting against were really good sports about it. But me and Carson were chasing a guy who had a crime stat 4 or something, like really, high in the crime in the crime levels. And he was in the Hawk, and I was in the Avenger Titan, and we chased this Carrack for ages. We chased them all the way back to Grim Hex, and they didn't. It was like, because they were out near an OM marker, so Grim was like 300 kilometers away, but they flew without quantum traveling away because they wanted to fight us, and boy did they fight us. And we got their ship so low. This was also, keep in mind, this was back when the Carrack was especially tanky, and I know that they're leaning towards ships being tanky again so that people have enough time to get in an escape pod and leave. But anyway, so we chased them all the way back to Grimhex, and they got into the hangar, and then the hangar doors closed and cut the Carrack in half, and they blew up and died. And we were all like going back and forth in the chat, and we were like, oh man, guys, we almost got you. And they were like, yeah, you almost got us. And then the doors finished the job or whatever. But that's the kind of stuff that I think is really cool, because like me and Carson objectively were underprepared for that engagement, but because these guys wanted there to be somewhat of an experience. I mean, it's not like they weren't trying to kill us. They just didn't try to run away all like to the best of their ability, so to speak. But I don't know. It was just a really interesting engagement that wouldn't have been possible if we just showed up and immediately shut them down and then blew them up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those hard fought engagements, even if you don't win, are always way more fun than the ones that end really easily and quickly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about a short, like, fun victory, but that's usually reserved for, like, if you're in a larger engagement, I think. But usually 1v1s or in our case, it was like a 2v4, technically. But, one ship versus two ships, whatever. It was a lot of fun to have to be trying as hard as we were to, first of all, keep up with the Carrack because it was so fast back then, and then 2 was to put enough damage on them before their shields regened to hopefully damage some of their engines and slow them down and keep them where we wanted them to be. But it was a lot of fun, and everybody involved had fun with it.
Yeah, and we've been on the other end of that too. I think we had our Carrack for like 3 weeks or something, 3 weeks solid, where we didn't claim it or anything. We just lived on it for 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, that was a fun time.
Many
Maybe we
a
can
battle
finally
in that.
do it again. Maybe we can finally do it again with Pyro, hopefully.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, like I've been saying forever, is that I really, really, really want the game to work in a way where you can actually live out of a ship and not have to go, land and go to stations and stuff nearly as much, because not only is it a huge time suck to have to like spawn in and run to an elevator or ride a train to get to an elevator and call out a ship and stuff.
God forbid the elevator doesn't materialize right and you fall through the station.
Well, yeah, I mean, game glitches aside, like it still just takes forever to do anything, and so it's much nicer to spawn into a ship and have all your gear ready to go and stuff like that. So that's really what I'm looking for in this game.
Yeah, me too, dude. I mean, I still remember when they took away bed logging in other people's ships, and that really saddened me, because I was like, I used to be able to, bed log in your ship, for example, and if as long as you were the first one to log in, everybody could log back in and we would all still be on the same ship. It was great, and that really made it feel like a home away from home, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that world is coming. They do talk about being able to share resources, like as an organization having the ability to share ships and share ownership and things like that. So I hope that it's the case later where maybe the ship doesn't despawn in a way, and so like even if I'm not on, you could, and you had logged out in my ship, that you could come back in my ship and operate it like it was your own.
Yeah, or I think at the least, I think it would, the only way it would despawn your ship to save on those resources, you know, the game's resources, would be if no one is online, like no one who's registered to the ship. So I think a good use case would be like you go up to the ship's, I don't know, communications terminal or something, and you know you register as an active crew member, and then basically what that would mean is, you know, or rather, you know, if you're in a party, the owner would register you as an active crew member, because it would probably have to be the owner of the ship who's capable of doing this. But the you know, the idea being that once you're registered, if that person logs on, even if, you know, they don't technically own the ship, they would still be able to go about doing whatever it is they need to do, and that would include, you know, potentially flying the ship around or going on a mission, you know, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I see with that is then the ship might have to be always in the verse.
I think the only way that it would need to be in is if somebody is logged on, and if nobody is logged on, then it won't be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it won't appear unless somebody who could utilize it is on the server or online, I guess.
That's what I'm saying, because if they had it there all the time, I think, well, for one, I think that would be a huge waste of server resources, because they would have a shard with a single ship in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, when that shard could be used to render something else, and you know what I mean? It would just be fucking useless. So, first of all, huge waste of performance.
Just
there.
the whole idea
Could be
of
used
someone
to
else
render
being able
something
to
else.
log in and use your ship is just, that bothers me a little bit, because let's say we have a falling out with one person and they still have access to the ship, they get on and just crash it even though it's got loaded up with all kinds of gear.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps they could make that system even better by allowing you to be able to register people through the website. So, like, if you had a falling out with a friend, you don't even need to open the game to remove them from the ship's access log or whatever.
Yeah, utilizing Spectrum a little bit more.
Yeah, or something like that. Like, even if you just removed them from your friends list, it would just, you know, boop, like, they can't access it anymore, you know? Could be something that simple.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for an org leader to get online and remove them from the org or something.
Yeah, I mean, they could literally just do an if statement, like, if friends list yes, or if friends list no, remove from ship access or something.
Or you just give them, if
You
they're
know.
not the ship owner, they have limited access to the ship.
Well, that was also something that they mentioned, and I'm not going to go too far into this tangent, but they said in one of their previous Star Citizen lives that you're going to be able to designate, using an engineering terminal, I believe it was, how much access each member has to the ship. If, you know, somebody who's not registered to be a pilot sits in the pilot chair, the controls might be locked out unless they hack them or something, potentially. I don't know about the hacking part, but I know that, for instance, if you're not registered as an engineer or like a management position, you're not even allowed to open component bays. Like, they'll just be locked.
Yeah, granular permissions is something I've heard them mention a few times.
Yeah, that would be a little understandable, you know. Like, sure, you get access to the ship, but, you know, you can't fly it, you can't do anything with it other than open up the hangar and leave.
Well, it's
Yeah, see...
it's kind of like
No, go ahead.
in some games where you have like locks or I guess Valium with the totems that you can build that kind of restrict certain access to an area. It's, you know, those kinds of controls where sometimes you just want some stuff to be protected, even though your friends, like, you know, I would hide things from Alex just because I know he would screw with them or something. I could put them in a box that's locked to me or something like that.
Or, you know, it's your ship, you have access to the captain's quarters, and no one else can get in there.
But yeah, I mean, that would be super nice if you could, like, lock out a room to other people.
Yeah, like a biometric lock or something.
Yeah, I mean, it is the future. It should be something that would be doable, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that they could literally just set up as a very simple, like, command in an engineering terminal. Like, you could just go in and say, like, hey, this room, only open it for this player. And,
I mean, obviously, the
if it
owner of
doesn't
the ship
detect-
should be the only
Yeah.
person able to change who has the rights to do stuff.
Yeah. But then, it's like, obviously, if it doesn't detect the person in question, it won't open the door. I mean, I guess unless you sabotage it, but,
Well, maybe.
still, the point stands.
I mean, I could see a scenario where giving another player full access as well would be helpful. Like if you have somebody who doesn't get on as much but wants, the rest of the team to be able to utilize something fully, you can give permission to somebody else who's online more often, and give them full access, even controlling like who can access things. I can see that scenario too.
Yeah, but like, obviously,
Yeah,
do not
like-
give me access to the pilot seat.
Yeah, unless you just want to spawn into a fiery crash on the surface of a
I
planet.
don't know what happened. There's a lot of beeping and screaming.
I think it would make sense though if there were certain scenarios that their temporary permissions might be boosted. However, I could also see that might be easily abused. Like for instance, and this is getting really tinfoil hat type planning, but let's say for argument's sake, Mike, you registered Alex to only be an engineer and nothing else, so he can't access any flight controls. But in this hypothetical scenario, the ships are equipped with, kind of like an auto leveling permission system, where if the ship was under attack, Alex could hop in the pilot seat and actually fly the ship with permission, like basically an automatic permission. But if he was a pirate and was like playing the long con, waiting until you had accumulated enough resources or something, he could just have a buddy come in and attack the ship and trigger that priority change so that he could just fly
We're getting
away.
into too many ifs and whats. That's
Yeah, I know. It is an interesting question if they would think that far ahead, or if you were just, a deck mop hand, on a ship that was being attacked, would you just be screwed? You'd just jump in the escape pod and leave?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if maybe they would just leave that level of control decisions for that up to the player. I don't know if it makes sense to put that much effort into it and think that much about
I don't
it.
think it would.
You're thinking
it is
way too in-depth
interesting to
for
think
it.
about, though.
Yeah, because it would just be like, well, these are the scenarios that could happen, and if I give Alex this permission, then this could happen, so I'm just going to not give it to him because I don't trust him that much.
Which
Yeah,
is,
I mean, it is
in my defense, understandable.
it is interesting to think about, but no, I agree. I think it would just be a lot simpler and better overall to just give that control to the player and leave it at that.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good stopping point for tonight. Do you guys agree?
Yeah. I
All
mean,
right.
unless you feel like you have anything else you want to say, Alex.
Nope. I mean, I'm sure we'll have something to report back once we test the interdiction, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I
The
mean,
distortions.
I hope for your sake 324 doesn't drop while you're gone, because we are going to leave you in the dust.
That's fine, but I mean, I'll be back next Saturday, so I'll be ready for the next podcast.
Okay. I mean, I doubt it will, since we still don't have a PTU build for it, but you never know.
Never know.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us this week. We'll see y'all in the next one.
Toodaloo. Ooh.